myself again. I'm Karan. I'm the CMO of Mitte. I'm live right now from Berlin, from Mitte HQ in Berlin. And I'm really happy to introduce Peter today, who is a food chemist from Doemens Academy. We actually met a little over a year ago. I was his student. He runs a Water Sommelier course at Doemens Academy, which technically makes him a master water sommelier. We will talk more about that later. He's been doing this for over 20 years, so he's really the best person we could get today for this discussion. So Peter, welcome to our discussion and thanks for joining us today. Before we jump into the topic, maybe you could share a bit about yourself with everyone. It's fair to say that you are quite the water expert. You are the headmaster of the Water Sommelier course at Doemens, but you started your career as a food chemist. So could you tell us how you got here and what's your relationship with mineral water?
Yeah, hello and welcome to you all. And first of all, thank you very much, Karen, for giving me the opportunity to dive a little bit into the exciting world of mineral water together with you all this evening. So as you mentioned, yes, I really studied food chemistry a long time ago. And after a few other stations, I finally ended up at the Doemens Academy. The Doemens Academy, it's a institute for further education and consulting, above all in the beverage sector. That means especially for beer, for soft drinks, and for water. And since most of my colleagues are brewing technologists, so that means they are very experienced in beer, I focused on the alcohol-free sector. That means I focused on water and above all on the sensory perception of water. And yeah, actually you might think that water is really a boring and simple molecule because it's only one oxygen, two hydrogen atoms. But if you have a closer look at it, you can realize that it's really an exciting matter that still holds many secrets. Yeah, and that was fascinating for me. And also the sensory perception of water was very, very exciting for me. And in my opinion, every water has its own taste. And that's why about 10 years ago, yes, I developed the Water Sommelier course you mentioned. Yeah, it's a 2-week course, and which has since become very successful worldwide, and more than 300 people from all over the world became certified water sommeliers. That means we have, for example, in Germany, more than 200 water sommeliers, and we have in Taiwan more than 30 water sommeliers, because we are running these courses in German and English, and since last year also in Mandarin. And moreover, I am also the managing director of the Water Sommelier Union, and the Water Sommelier Union is an association of all certified water sommeliers. So over the years, I developed a real passion for water, both professionally and privately. And I'm always happy to share this knowledge and this passion for water with other people. And therefore, I'm very, very happy to be part of the Zoom meeting this evening.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. I think most of us have heard about wine sommeliers, but I think water sommelier is also something which is now growing quite a lot and becoming very interesting. I'm just going to for the people who just joined us, I'm just going to say that throughout the session, just please feel free to ask questions. There is a Q&A button in the window. Just post your questions there, and we will try and get to all of them towards the end of the discussion. Okay, well, great. Thanks for the introduction, Peter. I want to start with the real basics of mineral water. So could you tell us how mineral water gets produced, and what's the role of our natural water cycle in this process? I mean, I guess all of us already in our science classes at school, we learned that we have water on Earth's surface, which evaporates, it condenses, and it precipitates on an ongoing basis. It's happening everywhere in mountains and cities and over the ocean. But what happens after the fallen precipitation seeps into the ground? I guess that's where the journey for the mineral water begins. So could you tell us right from the start that how mineral water actually gets produced?
Yes, you're talking about the production of mineral water, how mineral water is produced. Yeah, in my opinion, mineral water cannot be produced. It can only be bottled, of course, because it is produced by nature. And I often use that term that mineral water is grafted by nature. Yeah? Because mineral water is really a gift from nature without any alteration by humans. Yeah? So it is only bottled, and it's a gift from nature. But you're surely right, Karen. Mineral water is not, of course, also a part of the global water cycle. Yeah? That means when water seeps underground, any impurities that may be present in the water, for example, pesticides or pharmaceuticals, which occur, unfortunately, nowadays in water, they are absorbed by the rock layers and thereby purifying the water, but in a very natural way. And on this long way to a water reservoir underground, this water can also be enriched with many valuable and very precious minerals. And that's an astonishing thing, in my opinion, yeah, because it's all natural.
Interesting. We will be talking more about these minerals and what are those minerals that get into the water. But I'm very curious. I want to ask you, how long does this whole process typically takes?
Yeah, the duration, it depends entirely, of course, on the rock through which the water flows. For example, you can have gravel. Yeah, in gravel, which is very, very permeable, it can be perhaps several meters per day. In dense, almost impermeable rock, for example, granite, which is more common, yeah, the water moves only perhaps a few centimeters or even a few millimeters per day. So in many mineral waters, it can therefore take centuries or even millennia for the surface water to reach corresponding groundwater layer. That means the water reservoirs. So, for example, it has been calculated that many German mineral waters, and we have more than 500 different mineral waters here in Germany, and many of them are very, very, very old, and many of them date back till the Ice Age. So it means it's wow. They are very ancient water.
Very, very fascinating. So just to recap, just to make sure our audience gets this. So water precipitates, it seeps through the earth, and then it takes, well, decades, if not more, for the water to actually to get to the aquifer at the bottom. And this journey involves filtration of the water. Water gets filtered through these rocks, and while it's getting filtered, it picks up essential minerals from these rocks, and then it deposits at the bottom at an aquifer, and then typically somebody would come and drill a hole and pump that water out, which is what we get up there. Great, thank you so much for covering that. Could you, moving now to the mineral side, could you tell us what kind of minerals get dissolved during this process, and how do geological conditions of the region impact that? Does it make big difference to waters if they're from one region to the other?
Yes, there's a big difference. So the difference in mineralization depends, of course, also on the rock layers through which the water flows. So I'm sure that most of our listeners know the Alps between Germany till Italy and Austria. And the Alps consist mainly of dolomite. Yeah? However, this rock, dolomite, is hardly soluble in water, so that most of the mineral waters in the Alps and the southern parts of the Alps are relatively low in minerals. That's one example. Yeah? Another very common rock is limestone, for example. Yeah, lime is also hardly soluble in water. That means most of us and our listeners are familiar with lime deposits in water kettles, for example, which can actually only be removed with acids. That means you use acetic acid or citric acid to remove this precipitation in your kettle. But exactly this process can also occur in nature. That means normally mineral waters in region with a lot of limestone are also relatively low in minerals. But on the other hand, many of these areas are of volcanic origin, and in volcanic regions you can find a lot of carbon dioxide in the underground, and this carbon dioxide can also act as an acid, because you know, when you have carbon dioxide and water, you will get carbonic acid, and carbonic acid, yeah, it's also an acid like acetic acid or citric acid. And that means that this carbon dioxide in the underground in these volcanic regions makes the minerals soluble. For example, the calcium carbonate. Yeah? For example, in Germany, we have a very well-known region. It is called the Eifel. It's in the western parts of Germany. And there are also some well-known water brands. And this region is also a volcanic region. And as there is a lot of carbonic acid in these regions in the underground, the waters there are very rich in calcium and in hydrogen carbonate. And these two substances, calcium and hydrogen carbonate, are dissolved from the limestone by the action of the carbonic acid. So you see that carbon dioxide is very, very important for the solubility of the minerals. Or perhaps a third example, in some areas in the eastern parts of Europe, yeah, we have large rock salt deposits in the underground. And these sodium-containing compounds are very well soluble in water, even without the presence of carbon dioxide, so that in these areas, for example, in Romania, in Serbia, in Slovenia, we will find a lot of mineral water brands which are very, very rich in minerals. That means, yeah, it's really dependent on the rock layers the water will flow through.
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite water, it comes from actually Eastern Europe, and you probably know what I'm talking about, which is super high on magnesium, and
yes.
That's actually quite interesting. So what we understand is that the geology of the region plays a very important role in what minerals get added to the water. And from what I hear from you, typically, I mean, there are a lot of minerals, but I think typically the minerals that you would find in mineral water would be calcium, magnesium, sodium, and then trace minerals as well. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the minerals. So of course you can normally, of course you can also drink tap water, of course, yeah. But for mineral water, you have really a big variety of different brands, yeah. And when you, for example, when you drink tap water, you're really bound to the water which comes from in your own household, out from the faucet, yeah. So that means you have no possibility to vary it, yeah. And that's, in my opinion, the big advantage of mineral water. That means in the beverage store in Germany, we have a lot of beverage stores which are sometimes really focused on mineral water with more than 40, 50 different brands of mineral waters. You can really choose exactly the water that you like best, or which suits best for your health. Yeah? And if you have the opportunity, and I recommend it to all people, yeah, when you have the possibility to get different mineral waters brands, you can really taste them against each other. And I think you will certainly notice that each water has a different taste. And that depends on the mineral composition. Yeah. So in my opinion, water really, or natural mineral water, has really a so-called terroir. I'm sure you know this expression from the wine industry, and that means that it has the character of the region where it comes from, and depending on the occurrence of minerals in that region. Yeah. And yeah, you were asking about the taste of different minerals. So perhaps you can have minerals mineral water, because you mentioned water from Eastern Europe with a high concentration of magnesium, for example, or a high concentration of sodium. For example, when you have a mineral water with a high concentration of sodium, that's more than 200 or 300 milligram per liter, you will have a salty taste, because sodium is responsible for a salty note in the water. So when you drink mineral water with a high concentration of magnesium, it's very interesting. At concentrations of about 200, 300, 400 milligram per liter, the water tastes for most people sweet, but when you have higher concentrations, and I think you mentioned the water with about 1,000 milligram per liter of magnesium, the most people describe this taste as bitter. So you see that the taste of the minerals can also change a little bit depending on the concentration of the minerals. And for example, you also have a lot of mineral water with a high concentration of calcium. And it is very interesting that calcium doesn't have any taste, but calcium has a special mouth feeling. That means when you have a mineral water with a higher concentration of calcium, more than 300 or 400 milligram per liter, this calcium concentration will lead to a dry note in the water, and many people describe it as a covering mouth feel on your tongue. So you see that every mineral has a different taste, and therefore every mineral water has its own character and its own mouthfeel, own taste.
It's fascinating. It's extremely fascinating. I mean, we trained quite a lot on the taste of mineral water, and I think it's a fascinating word out there, that how these different minerals impact the taste of the water. I want to actually talk a little bit more about these minerals, not from the taste perspective, but more from. I want to ask you: could you tell us why or how important are these minerals for our bodies?
Of course, minerals are very, very important for the human body because minerals are essential food components that humans must take in with their food, similar to vitamins, to essential fatty acids, to amino acids. These stuff is, it's also essential. That means you have to ingest these substances. Some people claim that you can get sufficient amounts of these minerals from solid food, from meat or from vegetables, from fruits and so on. But I think that's only true for people who really eat a balanced and a very healthy diet. And in my opinion, only very, very few people do that these days. So that is why the intake of minerals from water, in my opinion, plays an important role. So that with the right water, you can really cover your recommended daily intake of these substances very, very well. Only some data, according to a recent study, a German study, it is said that about 55% of women in Germany do not reach the recommended intake of calcium. And about, I think, 29% of women in Germany consume less than the recommended amount of magnesium. And in my opinion, this really shows that there is a real deficit for these minerals, and you can cover these deficits with mineral water, for example.
Yeah, I think it's all about holistic approach. I want to actually, and so I think it's pretty clear that the minerals are really the building blocks for our body. I want to dig into your food chemistry background for a minute more. So I know that in general, just because we consume various nutrients, it doesn't mean that 100% of them make their way through to our cells. Actually, our body is able to use only a portion of nutrients that are taken in. Could you tell us what this means when it comes to the nutrients in water? Can we even take in a lot of nutrients from water?
Yes, of course you can, yeah, but of course the absolute amount of minerals that you take in with your food and with your nutrition is very important, but that's only one point. Yeah? In my opinion, much more important is the so-called bioavailability of minerals. And it's not only for minerals, it's also for vitamins, for amino acid and so on. So let's have an example. If you, for example, consume 10 milligram of iron per day, yeah, iron can also occur in mineral water. Normally it is removed because of metallic taste, but there are some curative and healing waters here in Germany with a higher concentration of iron. So let's take the example 10 milligram of iron per day you will ingest. Yeah? But this doesn't mean that these 10 milligram are completely absorbed or resorbed by the body. Yeah? Especially with iron, it is assumed that only about 10% of this amount, which is ingested, also ends up in the body. And these values, this 10%, that means only 1 milligram out of 10 milligram will really end up in your body. And it's also depending on other substances you ingest with your iron, for example. So if you ingest your iron together with ascorbic acid, the ascorbic acid enhances the resorption of iron. So perhaps you can mix your mineral water, your iron-containing mineral water with fruit juice, with lemon juice, which has a lot of ascorbic acid, and then you mix it with this lemon juice, the resorption of your iron is enhanced, it's improved. Yeah? But in contrast to this, the simultaneous ingestion of iron with, for example, with black tea or with coffee reduces the resorption of iron, because in tea we have a lot of phenolic substances, and these phenolic substances will bind the iron, and therefore it will avoid the resorption of iron. So you see that the bioavailability is very, very important, and it is also important other substances you will ingest together with the minerals.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. You know, there's this study, and I'm sure you would be aware of that. There is a study, there are some studies actually that indicate calcium and magnesium's bioavailability through mineral water is quite high and actually comparable to milk. And I find it very fascinating that, you know, water can, I mean, we usually when we think of water, we don't think of water as a source of nutrients. We drink water to hydrate, but there are studies out there that indicate that, you know, these nutrients, especially calcium and magnesium's bioavailability could be as high as milk in water. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
This actually brings up another topic for us to touch upon, which is the topic of pure water. You know, it is such a big topic, especially because of how much of a myth it can be that pure water is good for health. And I think a lot of us have this misconception that purified water is the best, when actually what we don't realize is that purifying water is just half the story. For the water to be healthy, it should be free of contaminants and full of essential minerals. So could you tell me your point of view on this? For example, what are the major differences in your mind between pure and mineral water, whether it's health-wise or taste-wise?
Yes, you're talking about pure water. Yeah, I think you mean purified water.
Yes.
Because in my opinion, mineral water is also pure water, because yeah, for example, according to the European legislation, mineral water must be protected from contaminants, and mineral water is, according to the legislation, water of original purity. Yeah, that means mineral water is pure, and no artificial purification is allowed, similar to tap water, for example. Yeah? So I know that purified water plays a major role, for example, in the United States, yeah, for example. And in my opinion, not yet in Europe. And purified water normally is demineralized and purified by reverse osmosis. Of course, you can remove all the contaminants like pesticides or other ingredients which are unwanted. And of course, some people claim that you can detoxify your body with these extremely low mineralized waters. Yeah? And of course, in my opinion, this is certainly true, yeah? That you can detox your body. So if a water contains very few ingredients, then this water can, of course, absorb many substances from the body and thus flush them out, yeah? Because the solubility of this low mineralized water is very, very high. And of course, if you do that, you will also notice that you have to go to the toilet very, very often when you drink large quantities of such a water, of purified, low mineralized water. So this means also that these waters really have a diuretic effect. And this diuretic effect enhances the flushing out of unwanted substances out of the body. For example, poisonous metabolic products. And in my opinion, it's also astonishing that extremely low mineralized water also leads to a special mouth feeling in your oral cavity, which is normally described as, most people describe it as a bitter aftertaste. Of course, it is not a taste because you don't have any bitter tasting substances in this water, but it is described as bitter aftertaste or a bitter mouth feeling. And that means, in my opinion, it's not neutral in taste, and because our zero standard in our mouth is saliva. Yeah, for us, saliva is totally neutral, and but saliva has 400, 500 milligram per liter of minerals, so it's not extremely low in minerals, and therefore you can perceive a difference between your saliva and these extremely low mineralized waters. In my opinion, I wouldn't drink such a water for a longer time, as it can, of course, also lead to a lack of minerals in the body, because not only the unwanted substances are flushed out, like metabolic waste products, but of course also valuable and precious minerals, which are essential for our human body. And therefore, in my opinion, of course, you can detoxify your body with these waters, but in the long run, you should also, take a higher concentrated, higher mineralized water.
Yeah, I think this is a very important and interesting point. Just to make sure that our audience, takes away something from here, I'm just going to summarize this. I think one way to identify this purified water is to see the TDS level of the water. When you buy the bottle, or when you buy the water, then you can see what is the TDS content of it. And if the TDS content, typically if it's below 50 ppm, it's considered to be pure. It's considered to be low water. It could be natural, but mostly purified waters are low. And
of course, there are natural waters which are extremely low mineralization. Yes. For example, in the Alps. Yeah, you're right.
Yes. Water coming from Black Forest, I would assume.
Yes.
Yes. And I think it's really good if you are detoxing, and I think this water fits in really well. But I think the message is that this is not your everyday drinking water. I think incorporating mineral water is really the key. Okay. Well, great. I think that was great. We are just in time for questions now, actually. So we're going to open to questions now. We have a lot of questions here. First of all, thank you very much, Peter, for giving us that overview about the natural water cycle and how mineral water is so distinct. And thank you all for your questions. We are going to try and get through them, through all of them. No promise. We will see, how many questions we can get through. And there are some really interesting questions that we have here. I'm going to start with. All right. I'm going to start with a question from Yanis, which the question is, what is the difference between sparkling water and mineral water?
Between sparkling water and mineral water?
Yes.
Okay. I know there's a confusion because also in Germany, many people think mineral water is a sparkling water. Yeah. So in Germany, many people think, perhaps you know that in Germany we love sparkling water, but it has nothing to do with the category mineral water. So we have still plain mineral water without any carbon dioxide. We have really sparkling, effervescent mineral waters here in Germany. Many mineral water bottlers, they have now 4 different categories. They have still water, then water with 2 grams per liter of CO2, and the next level where the medium water was 5 or 4 milligrams per liter, and the real sparkling effervescent water with 7 grams per liter of carbon dioxide. So mineral water means it's a natural water from nature without any alteration by humans, but it can occur also in still version or in sparkling version. It has nothing to do with the carbon dioxide concentration. Yeah.
Okay, so sparkling water is about the CO2 content, in the water. It's the bubbliness that we say, and mineral water is the real minerals like calcium, magnesium, iron.
Yes, of course. But many people think that mineral water has to have a high concentration of minerals, but that's not true. Yeah, you have a mineralization which is dependent on the nature, on the rock layers. So you just mentioned in the Black Forest, we also have mineral water with 50 milligrams per liters, and we have in eastern parts of Europe mineral water with 5,000 milligrams per liter TDS. That means totally dissolved solids. So everything is possible from extremely low to extremely high. Yeah? But it is minerals from nature. Yeah, that means it's not allowed to add minerals. That's the main difference to in Germany. We have a so-called table water. And table water means you can add minerals to that.
Interesting. The next question is quite interesting. Our audience asked, what are our needs in minerals and how mineral water intake can help to cover it? So what are our needs, our body's needs in terms of minerals?
Yeah, of course, there are recommended daily intakes of every minerals. For example, let's have one example. The recommended daily intake of calcium is 800 milligram, 1,000 milligram per day. That means everyone should ingest per day 1,000 milligram of calcium. Yeah? So nowadays, many people prefer vegan diet, vegan nutrition. So I think every one of our listeners know that milk is the most important substance for covering the calcium concentration. But if you avoid milk or milk products, you can really have a big deficit in calcium. And in Germany, we have a lot of mineral waters with a calcium concentration up to 500, 600 milligram per liter. That means when you drink 2 liters of these mineral water brands, you have 100% of your recommended daily intake. So you have recommended daily intakes for every minerals. For example, calcium 1,000 milligram per day, magnesium 350 milligram per day, and you can also cover this partially with mineral water. Yeah.
Okay, so the message is to replace milk with water.
Yeah,
high,
you can do it. Yeah,
water with
of
high
course,
calcium
milk is
content.
also a very, in my opinion, very good and necessary.
Okay.
Stuff.
The next question is from Victoria, which I think is for me. Victoria asked if can Mitte produce those mineral waters? Well, we started. I'll take this, Peter, if it's okay for you. This is a more Mitte specific question. So, well, we started Mitte with exactly, with taking inspiration from nature. So we saw that there are so many kinds of mineral waters in the nature, and the only way the technology that we use right now to consume that water is through bottles, and that's something that didn't sit very well with us, and we wanted to build a more efficient and a more sustainable way or to deliver that water to you guys. And I think that's where the idea for Mitte came to life. And we are still working on building our products, and the products that we are working on, they're built on the core principle that water should be free of contaminants and full of essential minerals. And one size doesn't fit all. We all have very different lifestyles. We all have different taste preference. We all have different needs. I have kids at my home. We might be doing a lot of sports. So we all have different lifestyles and different needs. And with our products, the underlining or one of the core functionalities that we are working on building is that you are able to personalize your water based on your lifestyle and based on your needs. So if you prefer to have water, replace your milk with water and have water with high calcium content, then hopefully one day Mitte can deliver that to you without the bottles, without the carrier of bottles. So it's your small little bottling facility at your home, which allows you to create your water based on your own taste preference. That's the whole idea behind Mitte. Thank you for asking that question. I'm going to quickly take a few more. We're running out of the time. Neil asks, you mentioned the role of carbonic acid in bringing the minerals into the water. Does the acid remain? Is pH a significant way to discriminate healthiness or taste? Do any other acids play this role?
Yeah, the carbon dioxide, of course, it is sometimes very, very important for the solubilization of minerals. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, for example, when you have limestone, yeah, because of the calcium, most of the calcium compounds are depending on the carbon dioxide concentration. Yeah? And because of the carbon dioxide, when you have a sparkling water, of course, you also have a rather low pH value. But in my opinion, it doesn't have any influence on your health. Yeah? Because some people say, okay, you should avoid sour nutrition, yeah, but that has nothing to do with the carbon dioxide, because the carbon dioxide will evaporate when the water comes to your stomach, yeah. So there's no health influence, in my opinion, by the carbon dioxide, yeah. But it's very important for the solubility of the minerals, and it is also important for the taste, because when you have mineral water with a high concentration of minerals, of course you have a bitter or sweet or salty taste, and many people, they want their water neutral without any taste, yeah? And if you have carbon dioxide in your water, you can cover a little bit the taste. Yeah? That means it is much more difficult to perceive a special taste in your mineral water when you have carbon dioxide in it, yeah, compared to a still water. Yeah, in a still water, you really can perceive a salty taste when you have a high concentration of sodium. Yeah, and therefore, many mineral waters which have a high sodium concentration, you can only buy in a carbonated version, yeah, because otherwise you wouldn't drink it, because it would taste like seawater. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. Well, the next question is actually quite an interesting one, and I get this. I get this question a lot. I have my opinion on this, but I would love to know what you think, Peter. This question is: shouldn't people in countries like Germany just drink the water from the tap?
I think I already mentioned a little bit. Of course, you can in Germany you can drink tap water. Yeah, you don't have to be cautious. Yeah, so in Germany you can drink tap water, but I already mentioned that. Yeah, when you drink tap water, you're really bound to this water which comes in your home time out of the faucet. That means you don't have any variation. Yeah. And that's, in my opinion, it's the big advantage of mineral water. That means you can choose the water you really like. Yeah, that's, in my opinion, the main advantage. Yeah. In Germany, our tap water is very, very seldom chlorinated. In other regions, you have chlorine in your water, and you have a very, very bad taste because of, or smell because of this chlorine. Yeah, but in Germany we have a good tap water, of course, but you're bound to that.
Yeah, I'm going to see how many more questions I can get past. So from tap water to bottled water now. The next question is from Nicholas, and the question is, how do you see the environmental impact of bottled mineral water? Maybe I can start, and you can jump in, Peter. I think from our perspective, like I said, the whole origin of our company Mitte is based on the fact that we want to eliminate bottled water. And I think the damage that bottled water, especially the single-use bottled water, that is doing to our environment is just unbelievable. And I think the impact is at a few different levels. First of all, the whole process of actually producing these plastic bottles has a very damaging impact. You bottle water from one part of the world and then you ship it around the world. The CO2 imprint and impact of that is massive. And then the problem doesn't end here. Once this water gets delivered to your house, or you buy it, you consume, and then you hope that the bottle is getting recycled. But in reality, 90% of the plastic actually doesn't get recycled, and then the plastic waste problem is a biggest disaster that we have seen so far. So this is not a viable or a sustainable way to drink water in long run. And actually, I will go out on the limb and I would say that in, I don't know, next 5 to 10 years, we will see there's a consumer pressure, there are regulation pressure. We will see that single-use plastic bottle will eventually phase out, and hopefully, we will find there will be more sustainable ways, which is what we are also working towards, to build more sustainable ways to deliver mineral water to your homes, and that would be the more long-term. That would be the long-term strategy, I would believe. Do you have anything to add, Peter?
Yeah, I agree with you that it's a big challenge, above all for the mineral water industry, the plastic waste, and but I think it's a big difference. For example, when you compare Germany, the German market, to other markets, because you really have a big problem regarding disposable plastic bottles throughout the world. In Germany, we have a very, very good system, because we have a lot of returnable bottles, and this, of course, diminishes the plastic waste. And I myself, I always prefer glass bottles compared to plastic bottles. But I think in German.
Which, by the way, has a even bigger carbon footprint, because of the process of it takes a lot of energy to produce a glass bottle, and then to sanitize it, it's far more. It has a much bigger CO2 footprint than plastic bottles.
Of course, it depends on the transportation. So in my opinion, you should always prefer local mineral water. When you buy mineral water, you shouldn't. In Germany, you shouldn't buy water from Asia or from America. You should really buy local water, because then I think it's environmentally friendly.
Okay, I will squeeze in one last question. I know we are running out of time already. How great, I think this question is from Asif, how great is the variance in terms of suitability of a particular type of water from person to person?
Yeah, of course, it depends from person to person, the suitability. Perhaps a personal example. It depends what you are doing. For example, when I love riding my racing bike, and after sports, of course, I think my body has demand for higher mineralized water. So after sports, I prefer a water with a higher concentration of minerals, with a higher concentration of sodium, or also of magnesium, because of muscle grams and so on. But for example, if you want to enjoy your glass of red wine in the evening, you shouldn't pair it with a sparkling water or with a high mineralized water. So in my opinion, a low mineralized water and a still water fits best to your red wine. So it depends on your personal situation. Yeah, it depends on the situation. It depends on the gender, because, for example, I mentioned that the calcium problem. Yeah, and I think everyone knows that women need more calcium than or more iron, for example, also than men. Yeah, so yeah, it depends on every person which water you should prefer.
Yeah, since you mentioned wine, I'm going to put in a shameless plug here. My colleague Lauren, who's the host of this event, she actually had written a really nice article along with a cheat sheet, which actually helps you pair mineral water with wine. It's available on our journal. If you go to Mitte journal, you will find that there. It's a very fascinating piece, I must say.
Great.
Okay, I will. And also, she tells me that I can squeeze in another question. So I'm going to take one more from Jeff. Jeff says that my understanding is the minerals found in the water are inorganic, and therefore the body does not absorb and metabolizes them, deriving no benefit from it. However, the minerals do alter the flavor or taste of the water. What is your position on this?
Okay, yeah, that's it's an excellent question. Yeah. Okay, of course, the minerals will change the taste. I already explained it, I think. And you asked, or you said that the minerals in water are inorganic. That's of course true. And there are some people from naturopathy, when these people say that you can only resorb minerals from only minerals from organic food. That means the minerals has to be bound to proteins, for example. Yeah? That's an opinion which is very, very common in naturopathy. Yeah? But in my opinion, for example, here in Germany, we have a lot of so-called healing water or curative water. And this type of water has to be acknowledged by the state as a pharmaceutical. Yeah? And they only get this acknowledged if when it is proven that the minerals in this water really helps to alleviate a special disease, for example. And in my opinion, that's really a proof that minerals also in water can really act. Yeah? So I know a lot of people who suffer with muscle cramps, and when they drink every day in the morning water with a high concentration of magnesium, they don't have any more muscle cramps. Or for example, heartburn is also a very, very big problem here in Germany. But when you drink water with a high concentration of hydrogen carbonate, let's say 2,000 milligrams per liter, you won't have any heartburn anymore. Yeah? So I think, in my opinion, it is really proven that also inorganic minerals in water can really act.
Thank you. Thanks for answering that. My colleague Lauren tells me that we have until 6, so we're going to squeeze in a few more questions here. The next question is, what is left behind in water by the purification process? I guess it also depends on what kind of purification process you're going through, but let's say it is something, I don't know, let's say reverse osmosis in this case, which actually takes out a lot of things from the water. What is left behind after that?
Of course, you can remove almost everything with the reverse osmosis. Of course, the distillation is bad. When you compare reverse osmosis and distillation is better than reverse osmosis. So you can, of course, remove pesticides or pharmaceuticals. And in my opinion, these ingredients, these substances are, more and more important also in Germany. Yeah, you have in your tap water, many times you really have residues of pharmaceuticals. Yeah, and of course you can remove these substances by distillation or reverse osmosis. So if you don't have pure water without any contaminants, of course it makes sense to use a purification process. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to add, I think, I mean, one of the technologies that we are working on is actually based on distillation. I guess what you're saying is what is left behind in the end is pure H2O, right? There's nothing else. The TDS level
Yes.
after reverse osmosis or distillation comes down to, I don't know, below 5 ppm, which basically means that there are no minerals left in the water, and what is left is pure H2O. And I think we discussed earlier that I think if you're detoxing, then it's really good to drink that water for a week or a few days, but not for the continued hydration, because your body needs minerals. And I think one of the biggest impacts of drinking water with such a low TDS is that, and you described that before in more detail, is that when you drink this water, it leaches minerals from your body, because water is a universal solvent. And if there is nothing in it, and if you are drinking that low TDS water, then the water would start leaching minerals from your body, which is not good for your health. So I think for the water to be really healthy, it has to meet these two conditions of free of and full of essential nutrients. So I think that was a really good question. I'm going to see if I can squeeze in one more here. The question is about the other is about Isabel. The question is, hi Isabel. The question is, are there any recommendations on the maximum intake of carbonated mineral water per day? Could it replace the recommended 2 liters per day? Does it change if you refer to children? So what is the maximum, if there is a maximum in the recommended intake of carbonated water?
There is no recommendation. It depends on your own on your own situation. So I know in many regions throughout the world, people don't drink sparkling water. Yeah? We in Germany, we love sparkling water, and you can drink 3 liters per day or 4 liters per day. It doesn't hurt you. Yeah? There's no problem. Yeah? So there's no recommendation. Yeah, it depends on what you prefer. Yeah. So for us in Germany, sparkling water is refreshing. Yeah, it's a tradition. Yeah, and therefore we love it. Yeah.
So unlike minerals, which basically your body has a need for a specific amount of minerals on a daily basis, CO2 is more for pleasure, I would say. And
yes.
I'm a recent sparkling water convert. I grew up drinking still water in the country where I come from. Nobody drinks carbonated water. But when I moved here 3 years ago, I sort of, I think it was a little bit of shock initially, but I think over a period of 3 years, I started loving it. Now I'm actually a sparkling water convert. And I think it's more about that sensorial aspects
Yes.
of carbonation that people consume it for. It's not so much for, it's different from minerals, I guess what you're saying. Okay, I'm just going to squeeze in this last question, final time. How can you measure this question is from Neil. How do you find out the TDS of my local tap water?
I can only explain it how it works in Germany. In Germany, every tap water supplier has to publish the concentration of the minerals in the tap water. So you can have a look at the website, and your tap water supplier has to mention all the minerals which are in your tap water. Yeah? So I don't know if this is common in every country. I don't know. I only know in Germany. You can also have a look.
I think if you really want to know, then you probably can get the small TDS sensors. There are these small devices that you probably would find them on Amazon or something, which you can, if you really want to know. And I'm sorry, but another shameless plug here. Actually, we get this quite a lot actually, and a lot of people ask us that why not just consume tap water, and we are, and a lot of people are actually also concerned about the quality and the contents of their tap water. So we at Mitte are now actually working on this service where we enable people to actually test the quality of the tap water from the convenience of their home. It's called Test Your Tap Water, and we actually are, we have not launched it yet, but it would be we would make this available for consumers in the US and in Germany in July actually. So this is really the sneak preview that I've given you guys, that's something that is coming up, which you can also use to test your quality of the tap water. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. This has been great. I think I really enjoyed this conversation, Peter. Thank you so much for taking the time out, and the audience, you thank you so much for taking the time out as well. You've been amazing, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion and as much as we did. And I wish good health to all of you. And signing out from Berlin here, and Peter from Munich.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. You're welcome.
All right, thanks everyone.